The title of this video might surprise you a bit, but it's true. The Nationals have just abandoned farmers by bowing to the coal industry and the coal lobby by scrapping their net zero policy. G'day folks, my name's Mitch and I've just started putting up videos related to Australian politics, climate change, social issues, the gas industry ripping us off and things like that. And there's been a lot happening this week in the space of climate and the environment. We saw the government and the coalition vote against David Pocock's bill to ensure a duty of care for young people. We're seeing parties at the moment debating Labor's new environmental law reforms. And recently, a few days ago, from when I filmed this video, the Nationals decided to scrap their net zero by 2050 policy. So this decision by the Nationals and David Littleproud and Matt Canavan represents a total capture of the National Party by the coal industry and the coal lobby, and an abandonment of the people who they're supposed to represent, which, you know, is supposed to be farmers and regional Australians. They have said that they've justified their decision by using a report that was written by a think tank called the Page Research Centre. And in the report, it uses modelling which says that coal is cheaper than renewables. And in the report, it says the modelling says it was written purely for the benefit of Coal Australia, which is a Queensland coal lobby group, one of Australia's peak lobby groups. So that's a complete lie, I'll just say. Coal is not cheaper than renewables. Renewables are the cheapest form of energy, which has been stated and confirmed multiple times by organisations such as the International Energy Agency, which is, one of Australia's biggest energy organisations who are mostly conservative, as well as the CSIRO and other organisations like that. But basically they justified their decision to dump their net zero policy because the coal industry and the coal lobby told them to. And not because it was the right decision to make for the people who they're meant to represent, or for farmers, or for regional Australians, or for most Australians who actually want to see action on climate change. Even one of the former New South Wales Liberal treasurers, Matt Keane, said so here.
If you're outsourcing your environment and climate policy to the coal industry, you'll fall in a very long way. The role of political parties is to govern in the national interest, not for vested interests. And today we're seeing a complete betrayal of the Australian community, with the coal industry prevailing over the interests of Australians.
So I think it's a pretty brave but stupid move by the Nationals, who in coalition with the Liberals are not doing so well at the moment and have lost a lot of seats in recent years. At the 2022 election, the coalition went from 77 seats to 58 seats, losing that election, which everyone was calling the climate election. And then at the 2025 election this year, they lost even more seats, dropping down to 43 seats, which put the coalition into absolute turmoil, which if you've been paying attention over the last 6 months, you would have seen. They don't know what to do with themselves. They split up, they got back together. They've been talking about whether they need to commit to climate action or dump it all together. And so, the Nationals have made a brave but stupid decision to go further away from climate action, where, as polling suggests, 80% of Australians want the government to take stronger action on climate change. So, they're making decisions which don't represent what the broad base of the Australian people actually want. And they're essentially just digging themselves further and further into a hole, or into a coal mine, digging themselves further into a coal mine that they won't be able to get themselves out of, because the coal industry wants them to, pretty much, to try and save the dying coal industry. And they're also abandoning their commitment to farmers, who have been getting smashed recently from climate impacts, worsening climate-related impacts, such as the droughts that we've seen this year as well. As the organisation Farmers for Climate Action state, climate change poses significant challenges for Australian agriculture. In particular, farmers are being affected by changing local weather conditions and facing more frequent and more extreme weather events, which together are already having an impact on farm profitability. This year in Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania was one of the worst droughts in decades, which was devastating for farmers. One farmer said on an interview that his family had had their farm for about 100 years and it was the worst drought they've ever experienced.
I'm fourth generation here, so we've been here nearly 100 years. Dad's always talked about the 67, 68 drought, and this is far worse than that.
Another farmer said he needed to give his gun to his neighbours because the drought had been so distressing for him. These droughts are only going to get more frequent and worse as the planet continues to heat up, And that's because a warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. And so it rains less. And then when it does rain, it absolutely buckets down either on the land or it buckets down at sea, which is, that's no use to us at all. And climate change now is already causing, as I said, huge distress for farmers and having devastating impacts on farming conditions right now. And unless we take our share of the responsibility as a wealthy, progressed nation, a high emitting nation as well, we're one of the biggest carbon emitters and exporters of fossil fuels. Unless we take our share of the responsibility to avert this crisis, this will only continue to get worse. It'll get worse for farmers and it will get worse for all of us. And so the Nationals choosing to abandon a net zero by 2050 target, which I might say is way too late anyway. We need real zero and we need it much sooner. But them choosing to abandon and scrap a target altogether is just an abandonment of a stable and reliable future for farmers in Australia, a stable and reliable climate for farming. And it kind of signals that they don't see climate change as a threat. Now, the Nationals say that they want to scrap net zero to focus on cheaper energy, which they say is coal and gas. But fossil fuels are the most expensive forms of energy. We know that now. Renewables are the cheapest form of energy. As I said, it's been confirmed time and time again. In 2024, fossil fuels were priced at $137 per megawatt hours compared to renewables, which were sitting at $71 per megawatt hours. But the reason why power prices are high, and this debate is happening at the moment, the reason power prices are high and have been high for the last few years is because our electricity prices in Australia and around the world are connected to gas prices. And gas is the most expensive form of electricity generation. And gas prices have spiked in recent years, especially since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where gas prices shot right up. And they've come down a bit, but they haven't come down much. And that's mostly why power prices have been so high for the last few years. What renewables have been doing is they've been adding downward pressure to overall power prices. I won't go into it too much now, but I'm about to put up another video about this whole situation of power prices and what's causing it. So stay tuned for that. And Farmers for Climate did a big survey in 2023. And what they got from farmers was a lot of sentiment on how renewables is actually helping keep family farms profitable and sustainable, especially through more unstable and difficult conditions like we've just seen with the droughts in Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania. One farmer said, "Our family farm wasn't financially sustainable during the drought until we hosted wind turbines. Now the farm has substantial, bankable income locked in every year, whether it rains or not. And now we're selling, the real estate agent says the secure income from renewable energy is driving up my sale price by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Renewables have saved my family farm." So essentially a policy to act on climate is both essential for the future of sustainable and stable farming conditions in the country and around the world, but it's also helping farmers who are struggling through these worsening conditions at the moment by, the money that they receive from these renewable energy projects. Now, I do want to add here, obviously these big renewables projects need to be supported by the farmers in the area and the farmers need to be consulted with. I am not a supporter of big business or the ministers coming in and just sort of saying how it is without, properly consulting with the community and understanding the concerns of the community. But also, aside from that, we need to have another conversation about energy consumption because we can't continue burning fossil fuels as much as we are. We know that. Our reefs are cooking, we need to change. But it's also very problematic to try and transition this whole entire high consumption energy system from fossil fuels to renewable energy without addressing the consumption. Because, the transition will require a lot of mining and a lot of energy use and a lot of resource use as well. Not as much as fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are so much worse. But it means we need to have a conversation about the consumption and reducing our reliance on as much of this energy. And then also we need to talk about how communities can become better energy independent within their own communities through things such as energy microgrids and communities producing their own electricity closer rather than putting all of the energy and putting all the eggs out in the basket of regional towns and relying on these regional areas for all of our energy. I think we need to talk about reducing our consumption and also kind of like creating more of our own energy more locally. I think that's a conversation that isn't being had enough, and that's a conversation for another time. Yeah, so as I said, the Nationals have been totally captured by the coal industry for reasons, as I mentioned, with that report that was, had information and modelling that was written for the coal industry that they used to justify their position to scrap net zero. But also, David Littleproud used to be a big supporter of renewable energy, and he's obviously since backflipped. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the amount of money that the Nationals receive from big fossil fuel companies and lobby groups, including Hancock Prospecting, which is Gina Rinehart, Santos, big gas company, the Minerals Council of Australia, INPEX, and many others, which I might also say are having devastating impacts on the environment and on regional areas and farming areas. If you've ever looked at a coal mine, that's not good for farming. And also, Barnaby Joyce seems to be pretty friendly with Gina Rinehart, mining magnate Gina Rinehart, who's Australia's richest woman, by looking at this photo. So although a renewables policy is helping to support Australian farmers and regional communities, obviously not everyone supports it, but as I said, the polls say that 80% of Australians want stronger action on climate change. Renewables and net zero is not good for the coal industry, the coal companies, who also seem to have pretty close links with the National Party, who also give them a lot of money in donations and who are also lobbying them pretty hard. And you were seeing it in the justification for their decision, which is based off a closely linked coal lobby report. So they've abandoned the people that they're supposed to represent and claim to represent to try and keep alive this dying coal industry, which is still, super profitable and making a lot of money from ripping up the landscapes and kind of ripping off the system as well. They've abandoned farmers who are experiencing the effects of worsening climate breakdown as well to try and help save this dying coal industry. So if you've got any thoughts on this, or if there's anything else that you'd like me to speak about or add, please drop me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.